Well, you know, with ice cream, we can't have any of it left over. That would be a tragedy. But anyway, welcome. Thank you for all coming. I am excited to be the person to help introduce you to what we think is the premier law and technology program in the country. Actually, I used to say the East Coast, now I say the country, and Ms. Olson always corrects me and says it's the world. So lawyers are not short on hyperbole. So I will let you make your own judgments at the end of the presentation. And more importantly, I just wanted to welcome you all here. We are excited to have all of you joining us, whether you're incoming JD students or LLM students. We have a really exciting program and a lot of slides. So I'm just going to launch right into it. What I would say is we are a great program in no small part because of our fantastic faculty. So we have a lot of people interested in the science and law and technology fields. Innovation competition that spans the entire spectrum. David Abrams is actually a PhD economist who does work on criminal law, among other things, but also patent law, and actually has done some of the most important patent and empirical work. Cindy Dahl is actually, I should have traded this up for you, Wasim. I apologize. Professor Dahl, for those of you who are looking forward, who are JDs, she is normally the leader of the clinic. She is on leave this semester, and actually this year, right? And so Wasim Murad is going to take her place. I'll step into her shoes temporarily, but that's fantastic. But he's going to spend some time telling you later about the Detkin Technology Intellectual Property Law Clinic, which is our live client experiential learning experience here, which is really unique and fantastic. Allison Hoffman, who's also one of our deputy deans, teaches health law and bioethics, along with bioethics, medical ethics and health policy. David Hoffman is also another one of the deputy deans. He teaches about smart contracts and has actually led the Journal of Law and Innovation seminar in different years. Herb Havenkamp is probably the world's leading authority on antitrust law. Gideon Parchamovsky is an expert on intellectual property and property generally, often from an economic standpoint in information law. I'll go back to Jennifer in a minute because I'm going to give it back to you. Professor Polk Wagner, who is on leave this fall, is our patent law professor who is also working on the federal circuit and has written on cyber law. Tuss Wilkinson Ryan, who many of the JDs will have for contracts, PhD psychologist, has really understood, has done work on smart contracting and copyright, and I do internet law basically, which takes me to the collateral fields of antitrust, copyright, and privacy. And actually, I often have a son who tells me that a lot of the work I do isn't law. A lot of it's to try to understand how to connect more people to the internet, which is a question of law and policy, but very little law. And, coming back, Professor Jennifer Rothman, who is, I think without question, the world's leading authority on the right of publicity, having just authored a book in Harvard University Press and has a website that is the resource that everyone turns to, but also one of the leading authorities, trademark, copyright, and all these other emerging areas. Jen, you want to introduce yourself? Professor Rothman.
Our newest edition.
And our newest edition.
Yeah, so I was just comparing notes here about this hallway, which doesn't have consecutively, right, numbers don't go in order. And I've been here for an entire year, and each time I walk the wrong way. Welcome. Some of you may be in my torts class, I'll be teaching first year torts this fall. Other classes you might find me teaching are trademarks, right of publicity, First Amendment, copyright, not all this year, but over time. So my focus in terms of my interest in teaching, prior practice area and experience is entertainment and media law and its intersection with IP, which is where I pick up some of the First Amendment stuff. I used to work in the film industry. My most recent scholarship has focused on property rights in people, which is where we pick up the right of publicity, which is a legal right over people's own identities, particularly their names and likenesses. But I recently authored an article that was in the Harvard Law Review about the intersection of trademark law, where people have trademark rights in their own names or sometimes likenesses, and how that might conflict with their right of publicity or privacy rights in their own identity. So those are the things I talk about and think about. I might add to this grouping, though she's not there and I think she is on sabbatical this year, Anita Allen, who does work in the privacy and tech space, and she and I are working on a project on post-mortem rights, both of publicity and privacy. That's what I'm next going to be thinking about.
Fantastic. So you mentioned Professor Allen. There's a bunch of what we call secondary affiliated faculty, including Tom Baker, who's done work on cyber insurance and different issues, Carrie Colonnese, Jonathan Click, Seth Kramer, who teaches the class, not this year actually, but on the First Amendment in the 21st century. So it's really a First Amendment class with a focus on new technologies. So there's a lot of people who are affiliated with the center and continue to do work. I think Professor Rothman's too humble. She's not just got a background in the film industry, she's an award-winning filmmaker, having gotten an MFA. And in fact, I love what she's doing on whether rights survive death. So this is a fundamental question about what the theory underlying rights are. Because if it's, when I was clerking, I actually got a case which is, does the right to attorney-client privilege survive death? And there's a question about who are you protecting and what are you doing, and it brings up those issues so wonderfully. I think it's fantastic. So it's really exciting. Anyway, and Professor Rothman is spearheading a new effort we're leading to try to develop a whole new line of programming on entertainment and media law. And we are just now in the planning stages of this. And if you're interested, if that is one of your interests, please come talk to us because we would love to. There's an organization called the Entertainment and Sports Law Society. And if you're involved in that and all that, we are really interested in looking for opportunities to collaborate with students because one of our commitments as a center is not just to have a faculty-led center. You'll see, and this is true in a lot of areas around the world. I was just having a conversation in the clock yesterday. One of the things, for example, Harvard's Berkman Klein Center is a wonderful place. It has no impact on students whatsoever. Why? It's essentially a think tank that they do their own programming. We've committed more than a decade to, we're built around a belief that a great law and technology center has to have engagement not just from faculty, but students and practitioners and something that spans all of it, because anything that doesn't do that is just a missed opportunity and it is an incomplete dimension, which from your standpoint is a fantastic thing, because we were actually working very hard on this. And we're open. What you should see is it's always in beta. We're always changing, always evolving, and trying to add more. So we really welcome, I mean, you'll meet Manish later. You came up with the idea of what we did on the CASE Act event 2 years ago. I mean, whatever you propose, we're going to try to find a way to get to say yes. And that's really one of the great positions we're in to be able to do that. So we actually are, as this center has grown and grown and grown, we actually are finding it, we're transitioning to putting it under 6 large headings. And these, what you'll discover, anytime you put something in headings, they don't always fit perfectly. So there's things that sort of fall in the cracks. So these are tended not to be exclusive more than inclusive or illustrative. But the headings we're putting it into include antitrust and competition law, which anyone who reads what's going on in the papers knows that Google, Facebook, Amazon are getting sued out the wazoo. If you want to guarantee a full employment right now, antitrust law is probably one of them, because that's not going to end anytime soon. Intellectual property is the core of any technology law center, and that spans copyright, trademark, and patent law, but also things such as the right of publicity, trade secrets, other things that frankly are more important now than they've ever been in ways that we can talk about as the technology's changed. We mentioned we're building an entertainment and media law program. Internet and privacy law is one of my interests as well, in addition to the intellectual property stuff. Health and life sciences and emerging technologies more generally, which is kind of a catch-all for everything that doesn't fit in all the other categories. But anyway, the point is, the beautiful thing about this is there are new categories. And so what you'll see is a lot of the classes you'll take as 1L, you're going to be reading very old state common law cases. And that's the way we classically train it, and that's where the great areas of private law come from. And casebook authors are under constant pressure to actually, can you find something from this century? That's not an issue in what we do. And in fact, when you find certain areas of study, they love studying it on emerging technologies because this is where things change. So my friends who used to study social norms, which is a really big thing a while back, try to study how they're formed and changed, and that's virtually impossible to do in most areas. It's very easy to do in the areas we work in because they're constantly in flux. All right, so more importantly, this is the backbone of any part of this. You're here as law students, and you're actually here to learn. These are the classes. The ones on the left are offered in the fall, and the ones on the right are tend to be offered in the spring. The spring is a tentative list. It's subject to augmentation because until you register around registration in November, that's still going to get finalized, but I can pretty much guarantee every class on this list will be taught. So as of right now, just because of leaves, it's a little bit heavier in the spring, but copyright, well, for the 1Ls, this doesn't matter because you're going to do this next year, except for as far as fall goes.
But LLMs, are LLMs
Well, we'll talk. But copyright, antitrust, property are being taught by faculty members who are primary faculty. Anita Allen's teaching privacy and racial justice. And we have cybercrime taught by an assistant U.S. attorney, former U.S. assistant attorney, IP and corporate learning, law of autonomous vehicles. So if this is something interesting to you, that's fine. I encourage you to think about this in the LLMs here. In the spring, we're going to teach 3 things that are part of the 1L option electives. So internet law is taught as a regulatory elective, privacy law and intro to intellectual property are taught as general electives. So you will have the option to take either of those or both, and if you're really a glutton for punishment, I teach both internet law and privacy. You can get me twice, and some people do it. It's not for the faint of heart, but there we are. Patent law next year, semester, trademarks, antitrust, mergers, IP and vertical restraints, patent litigation, social media law, intellectual property, national economic value, and there are other things that fit in this too. I would encourage you all to think about doing this. And for those of you who are LLMs, I am working on the thing we talked about yesterday. Yes, Jen?
I was just gonna say, I would add torts to the first list if we're going to have property.
Well, but torts is required. Property is an
So
elective.
it's an elective. See, this is why, because I'm new here.
Yeah?
But I mention this because I think tort law obviously enforces property laws, but there are lots of debates, especially in the areas where I work, where there's a question of whether it's really about property or whether it's a tort, and that affects both how we conceptualize it as well as the available remedies. So if any of you are into my torts class, you'll be hearing more.
Absolutely. And in fact, even the things that are largely, some of them are in transition. Trademark, which is one of your special trade secrets, name, image, likeness is at the heart of it. But even things like copyright, which are basically property, are heavily influenced by tort concepts. And so it's a fascinating subject matter. All right, so that's the classes. But what else do we do? We're not just classes. Beyond the law school classes, we offer a very unique set of joint degrees. And the MSE is for people, we actually have been producing students who are have graduate training in both law and technology. The MSE is for people who were engineering undergrads. The MCIT is pretty unique. There's no requirement that you've had a technical background before. And we have had English majors, political science majors successfully complete the program. It is hard, don't get me wrong. And it's challenging, but it's been transformative for the people who've done it. And my favorite moment is one of our students said they were a political science and Latin major. They were more qualified to be the Pope than being a tech lawyer and had trouble establishing their bona fides. And in fact, this was really a pivotal thing for doing them. In addition to the degrees, there's a certificate in engineering entrepreneurship, and we do give scholarships. And the person who is in charge of all this is Amanda Aronoff. So, Amanda.
All right. So I'm Amanda Aronoff. I'm the Managing Director of Cross-Disciplinary Programs and also the Director of Student Engagement for the JD MBA. I'm also a proud graduate of Penn Law School, and I'm going to keep this really short because for anyone who is considering any of these options, I would recommend that we schedule a one-on-one meeting. That's what I would do. This is, as you know, Professor Yu alluded to, these are incredible opportunities, but they are deep dives, and they're not decisions to be taken lightly. So email me. I know that Caroline's going to be providing my email, and I'm happy to meet with you anytime. But just very briefly, the JD MSE and the JD MCIT are the two joint degrees that we offer with engineering. As he also said, this latter is very unique because you do not have to have any STEM background. We have had people do that joint degree with English Lit undergrads majors, and it totally changed the trajectory of their career. You know, I mean, in ways you can imagine, and it really was an amazing experience, though challenging. And the MSE is obviously for students who have an undergraduate STEM degree. The way it works is that both of those are four-year degrees, and you take a full year where you become a primary engineering student. That can be in either the year after your 1L year or the year after your 2L year. And again, this is something I would explain more. There are pros and cons to each choice, and we've had students do both sequencing. So that's sort of, you know, again, I don't want to get into too many details. You do have to have the GREs to apply, so I mention that now because your life is, for the next, let's say, 4 to 6 weeks, going to be a lot chiller than it will be thereafter. So if GREs is something you're serious about, thinking about doing that now or next summer is sort of typically what students do who don't already have the GREs under their belt. I do want to mention 2 other programs, one which is up here, the engineering certificate, and also the Master's in Bioethics, which has increasingly appealed to students who are specifically interested in biotech. And of course, the CTIC Interdisciplinary Scholarship, which was created by Professor Yu and honestly has made a big difference because obviously an added year of school, opportunity cost, and also literal tuition cost, and this scholarship helps offset the additional cost of a year, not to mention that there are other benefits to winning that scholarship. So that's really it. Again, please, my door is literally always open. I am in the basement, actually, of this building, and feel free to email me to schedule a meeting. I will say that no student has ever regretted doing a second degree while they were here at Penn Law School. So, thank you.
We're supposed to call it the ground floor instead of the basement.
Oh, really? Oh, because basement sounds like that.
Anyway.
It is G. I'm G049 instead of B.
So I'm an old marketing guy. You got to call it the ground
I'm
floor.
sorry.
Amanda is here, when she mentions the law and technology programs, but she is actually responsible for every degree program that a JD will take outside. So she said JD MBA, and as you know, 70% of our students, you probably heard this, graduate with a certificate or a degree from outside. And that is interdisciplinarity at its purest and is unparalleled in any school I know of. Take full advantage of it. In addition, even if you don't do a full degree program, you're allowed to take 4 classes outside the law school, no questions asked. Most law schools discourage it because when you do that, we give schools the money. And our tuition costs more than their tuition. So this is a net, it's pretty, it's something most schools actively discourage. We actively encourage it. So even if a full degree isn't what you're looking for, if there are classes you're interested, do it. I mean, it's a great opportunity, and Amanda's the resource for all of these options. So we
And I'll
encourage
just
you.
chime in one thing. The only restriction on that is they have to be graduate level classes.
Unless you get a waiver.
Well, there are certain one-on-one meetings.
Yes, one-on-one. So what you'll learn in universities is a rule for everything, and there's an exception for every rule. And so whether you can qualify the exception, you do this, you figure it out. And I will tell you, if you can create an argument about how that an undergraduate class fits into your career, I have known those to be quite often granted. So don't assume just because it's a closed door, just because it's one of the rules. So I'm not promising, it's a waiver. I mean, that's discretionary. But on the other hand, it happens. So one of the great things about this is you can write your own adventure here in a very creative way. All right. Did we lose Wesley? Oh, let's talk about the journal. So one of the most innovative things we've done here is we have a class called the Journal of Law and Innovation. And so it's a journal, they're normally student run. This one actually is collaboration between the students and the faculty. And we have with us the editor-in-chief today of this journal, who is Ryland Ploger, who's right here. Would you like to introduce the journal?
Sure, yes. Have some notes.
Ooh!
Yeah. Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Ryland. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Law and Innovation here at Penn. As you can see, there are a lot of different aspects to the journal. We have some pictures of our members from last year, most of whom I think transitioned over to our board this year. So if you join in the future, you would get to meet some of our wonderful people. So unlike many of Penn Law's other academic journals, we are a collaborative learning experience between students and CTIC's phenomenal faculty. So every year we do a fall seminar in which our incoming associate editor class goes deep on a particular tech topic under the mentorship of, this year it's Professor Yu. We're doing space and satellite law, which is going to be really interesting if you've heard anything about, I think, is it Elon Musk?
Yeah. Who's an alum?
You'll hear about that a lot in internet law. So we have a fall seminar, which is a really interesting academic experience. You make a lot of new friends. It serves as a fantastic locus for our tech law community here at Penn. In the spring, we host a symposium where we invite authors from across the country to come and talk about their work. And then in the spring, we edit and publish a volume of cutting-edge scholarship concerning tech law and telecommunications, etc. So we don't have opportunities for one else to get directly involved this year. We hope that you're focusing on your classes and becoming stellar editors in the future, but we will have a direct application in the spring. And so in the meantime, if you get involved with some of CTIC's other student organizations, we would love to see that on your application in the spring. Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And it's not an accident you see Manish is in that picture. Noel's going to be a member of the Journal in the coming year. It's all pretty wonderful. It is a non-traditional journal because it's taught as a class. Many of our students will actually do other journals on top of this, so it's not exclusive of that. And because it's a class, it alleviates the workload, so you don't actually have to double up, and it actually works out really well. And as Ryland said, I mean, one of the great things that I love about it is a chance to interact with faculty and to really see them in a different way, in a different a level. But it also is one of the two places I think of where the students who are interested in tech law really come together. And it's really been a lovely collegial environment that's been spectacular. And so it's one of the things that, as a person who pulled it together, you hope for, but you can never count on. And it's been a really rewarding thing to watch that happen, thanks to the students and their commitment to it. All right? To be clear, LLMs, this is not an opportunity that's open to LLMs, unfortunately, because the selection was done last year. The other great curricular opportunity we have is the Detkin Technology Law and Intellectual Property Clinic. Technology and Intellectual Property Law Clinic.
Intellectual Property and Technology Legal.
There you go. Thank you.
It's a long one. I'll just call it IP Clinic.
And it's being led this year by Wasim Morad.
All right. Hey, my name is Wasim Morad. I'm the acting director of the IP Clinic for this year, while Cindy's on sabbatical.
There's a second slide if you want, whatever. It
Is
says
there a
that.
second slide? Okay.
All right.
So basically, this clinic is open to 2Ls and 3Ls as well as LLM. So you'll probably be taking this next year. But this clinic focuses on various aspects of IP and working straight with clients, right? So think of it as kind of baptism by fire, where you're working on different cases on different areas of IP. So just a little bit of background on myself. I am an electrical engineer. I worked at the United States Patent and Trademark Office for 15 years. Half that time as a patent examiner in the electrical arts, and then as a supervisor in oil and gas and mechanical. And then I got elevated to senior management at the Texas Regional Office in Dallas, where I traveled throughout the country educating folks on various aspects of IP. So these could be inventors, attorneys, judges, students, etc. So this clinic this year is going to have a little bit of a patent lean. So it will cover other areas like trademarks and copyrights and trade secrets, but it will have a little bit of a patent lean just because of my experience. But it will show folks the perspective from the government. You know, a lot of times when you have these classes taught, you're looking at it from the private point of view, but this is going to be unique because we're going to look at it from the perspective of a patent examiner. Aside from that, you know, we'll work on aspects of patent applications, patent drafting, patent searching, et cetera, et cetera. Now, aside from my experience in the USPTO, I also started my own law firm about 7-8 years ago, which focuses on areas that are outside of IP. And in this class, what we're going to do is we're going to see the intersection of different areas that intersect with intellectual property, such as estate planning or business law or employment law. Because, you know, the key in IP is to be very multidisciplined. That's how you make yourself competitive in the outside industry. And so this clinic will feature a lot of clients, some of which are entrepreneurs from Wharton, some of which are doctors from CHOP, or you know, random innovators or different innovators across the Philadelphia area. So it is a great clinic to learn live from the experience of working with clients instead of just trying to read about patent law or trademark law, et cetera. So I will leave kind of a note in your brain with this statement. So I'm an entrepreneur by heart. I've built many different businesses, right? But for me, the memorable moment for me was when I was a senior as an engineering student. So I created this device which basically operated a remote control car with my brain, right? So when I opened my eyes, the car would move forward. When I closed my eyes, it would stop. When I looked to the right, it would go, and when I looked to the left, it would go this way. And during that presentation, there were a bunch of Army recruiters waiting for me at the end of that presentation, offering me a job. Now, I want to ask you this question. From that experience, how many patents did I get out of that invention, and how much money did I make? Just guess. Because it's pretty unique, right? Basically operating something just by your brain. Anybody got to throw out numbers? Nothing? None. Zero. Why? Because when I was a student, no one told me anything about intellectual property, and the faculty didn't really know about it. 2 years later, when I was working in the patent office, I found out that some company in California built that exact same thing. And so for me, I've made it a point in my career to educate folks about IP, whether it be students, whether it be clients, whether it be whoever. Because the value of IP is so critical in this country that without it, we would not be where we are today. So, that's my presentation.
Thank you, Professor. So for those of you who haven't looked ahead to taking the bar, one of the revolutions in the last 20, 30 years is what we call experiential learning. It's not just classroom, one-way transmission information. And the live client, there's simulations, there's internships. This is where you actually represent people, clients, and it's a very different experience. And depending on where you want to take the bar, all students have to have a certain number of experiential learning requirements, and California requires the most. I think it's 9 credits. Anyway, and so you have to look ahead, and so you're going to need this type of experience. And the question is, one of the best ways for one of the best ways for people interested in this space is through the Deccan Clinic, and Manish, you can even tell them about that because you were a part of this when you get a chance. And so it's a fantastic opportunity. The other thing you should know about clinics is there's a lot of technology law clinics around the country. The key is intake of matters. And under bar rules, you can only work for nonprofits or indigents. And that's because a clinic can't be taking money away from a paid client away from a practicing lawyer. And the wrinkle there is if you only work with indigents, you actually can't get mature technologies. One of the things that we've done here is the Technology Transfer Office is one of the primary clients, which has very mature technologies, particularly coming out of the medical school. But also this clinic has been designed to work with lawyers, Philadelphia Lawyers for the Arts, different aspects which will bring referral of a wide variety of matters on a very steady basis. And it's a really unique experience among live client clinics, among the ones I know around the country. It's been really a tremendous success. In addition, we actually have a bunch of other opportunities. Patent law is innovative in the spring. It's taught as a flipped class. What does that mean? You actually watch your lectures outside and do exercises inside because using the time for lecture, many people think isn't a great use. Professor Wagner teaches that. He also teaches the Giles-Rich Moot Court Competition, which is taught as appellate advocacy for that. And I should go back and say with Professor Murad, if you're an LLM, you can look to register in November when we do that. And if you're a 1L, you'll have that opportunity come July for any time in your 2L, 3L years we go forward. There are a number of moot courts that people participate in, and in fact, people on an ad hoc basis have pursued moot courts. I've had students do the space law moot court, and I think the school will completely support you. And so what I would say is, just because you don't see something on the list, if there's a moot court you're aware of, if there's something you want to explore, it's wide open to you. Actually, I love the media law diversity moot court. Our students from our school won the championship, the national championship. And so they just graduated last year. Patent litigation is a class taught by Kent Jordan. For those of you who don't know, the District of Delaware is one of the most important patent courts in the country. They carry a docket of about 200 patent cases, and there's a bunch of districts in Texas that fight over this too. But it's very well established. He was a district court judge in Delaware. He's now on the Third Circuit, but he actually sits by designation as a district court and has a docket of always of patent law cases. And in fact, he's coming with us to our patent law conference in Tokyo to talk about it. That class he teaches is really unique because it's how it actually works. FinTech Challenge is something that's done periodically. There's a wonderful class that Professor Murad will be leading that is talking about Penn entrepreneurial engineers and Penn law. This is something where you actually work with engineering students and actually do a simulation to understand how to interact with people who will be a lot like your future clients. And in fact, there's a whole variety of electives which we talked about, and that is a really rich curricular experience. But the beautiful thing about a place like Penn Law, it's not just about in classroom. We have this wonderful array of extra, in addition, opportunities. So one is, every 1L knows you got to get a summer job. And I find that for tech law people, they often, the ones which we gravitate towards when you don't actually have any other idea of what to do aren't necessarily the ones that set you up for the recruiting in the fall the best. So if you go clerk for intern for a district judge, you'll spend a lot of time observing in court, and it's a good experience, don't get me wrong, but it's nothing particularly distinctively tech about it. And so there's a bunch of, we actually support public interest fellowships in this space. This is a list of people we've sent people to over the years, and in fact, it's not, again, exhaustive. If you come up with an organization in the government or a public interest organization that you're interested in, we'll support you. I mean, it's that simple. And so, in addition, we actually have a number of paid opportunities that we put people into. There's some we have very formal relationships with, particularly AT&T always asks us for students specifically, and we send them. And in fact, there are other organizations where, this is a list of organizations where people have spent summers. And it's a pretty interesting group, and I encourage you all, do we still have the database?
It needs to be updated, yeah.
We at least have an old database, and what you really will find that what you really need is a single contact in these organizations, just to knock on a door. We'll do our best to update them constantly, but even if it's a year or two old, frankly, it's still tremendously valuable. So I would think, and what you'll find is, if you find the person who actually did it, you call them up, they'll tell you exactly how they got the job. And it's pretty amazing how useful that really is. In addition, there's a number of semester-long opportunities which you could do. These are very rarely pursued, but if this is something that's going to do, you're interested in, I would strongly encourage you to think about them. So one of them is, this one's easy to do. PCI is Penn Center for Innovation is the technology transfer office at Penn. And we have an internship program there which can be done anytime. And so as you're going through this, and if this is interesting to you, you'll find that there's two kinds of externships. One that are already arranged and vetted by the school, and the other ones we call ad hoc, which is you don't have a standing relationship with them. This is one where it's established. There's a wonderful, one of the first cancer institutes in the country is called the Wistar Institute, and they do a lot of VC stuff. They're actually based right across on Locust Walk, and we've had a very successful relationship with them. The others are can be outside of Philadelphia. They require you to do some administrative stuff to actually get it lined up, but they are possible. Tsinghua has an intellectual property program taught in English. We also have standing relationships with the Internet Society, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, and the ACLU of Northern California, all of which are overrun with applications for summer internships, but they're in desperate need of people to work with them during the year. And so if this is something of interest to you, I'm happy to talk to you about what's required. And it's not for everybody, but if something is interesting to you, we'll support it, and we'll actually help you to do it. And most importantly, we have a fantastic set of student organizations. And we're really delighted to have many of them here with us today. What we're going to have, just speaking first, is one of probably the best established one is the Penn Intellectual Property Group. We are lucky to have one of the co-presidents here, Manish Namireddy.
Hi, my name is Manish Namireddy. I'm the co-president of PIPG. So PIPG is the hub for IP issues on campus. So every year we host a symposium in the spring, but this year we're also having one in the fall as well on October 14th. And that will cover IP issues brought on by the growth of the creator industry and streaming platforms. Additionally, we host different events related to IP issues, and we try to bring on judges, practicing IP attorneys, and scholars to talk about those issues. We also try to have events where students get to meet actual practicing IP attorneys. We also have a blog where students get to write about different IP issues as well. And we also have 1L and LL ropes as well. You'll have the opportunity to apply for that in September after the September Spring Club Fair. If you're interested in learning more about PIPG, we'll be at a club fair in the courtyard this evening from 6 to 7 p.m. But yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Fantastic.
And we'll send the presentation around after this is done, and the last page has, the contacts for all these things that we're talking about.
You'll have this whole deck in all the emails. And Noel and Michael for Penn Law Antitrust Association.
Hi everyone, I'm Noelle Choi. I'm co-president of the Penn Law Antitrust Association. It's relatively a new student organization, and it's actually very well represented by the LLMs. And for a while, a lot of there was a much bigger LLM presence than the JD presence, which I think really makes it a very unique organization, just because you get a lot of already practicing antitrust lawyers to provide their insight into antitrust regulation in their respective jurisdictions, such as Brazil, Korea, or Europe. The organization kind of provides a forum for students to come together, talk about antitrust issues that range from anywhere between civil litigation, criminal investigatory work, merger-related work, or even cartels. And we do that through our annual symposium, this speaker-related speaker series, and professional career events. And while last year we had our annual symposium in the fall, this year it'll be in the spring.
So I'm Michael Brown. I'm the vice president of the Penn Law Antitrust Association. And one thing she's mentioning, you can do a lot of transactional or litigation work in antitrust, but something else that I think is really unique about antitrust is that it permeates so many different areas of the law and of our lives. We can imagine antitrust coming up, say, in a healthcare case, prescription drug prices. There are problems there with technology, especially talking about like telecommunications. We already mentioned the Google, Facebook being sued out the wazoo right now. And also, it could be something as interesting as like sports. There was a case at the Supreme Court about the NCAA, whether the way that they host their league and the college arena is a kind of monopoly. And one thing that, again, Professor, you had mentioned is that we do have one of the foremost antitrust experts in the world, no hyperbole there, Professor Herbert Hovenkamp. And finally, Noel and I, we try to practice what we preach. We're actually both headed to firms next summer where we're going to do a lot of antitrust work, so we're happy also to answer any questions. We'll be at the club fair tonight, 6 to 7, about like what got us interested in antitrust and what we think it can provide to you. So thank you.
And then, Ryland, you're here to talk about ITSC. No one's going to talk about ITSC. Or Nami, whatever. One of you, somebody's going to talk about ITSC.
We'll both talk about ITSC. Hi guys, I wear another hat within the CTIC group. I am Director of Programming at ITSC. It stands for Internet Tech Society, Tech and Society Collaborative. We're a relatively new student group on campus. We come together to talk about any tech topics outside of IP that ranges from anything privacy, social media and platforms, blockchain, AI, space and telecommunications, and more. And if you have anything else outside that realm, we're really happy to just create a very open and happy space to talk about all of these topics. And Alyssa.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Alyssa. I'm the co-director of Pro Bono. And since we are a relatively new club, we've just started rolling the ball in terms of pro bono projects, and something that I think will really cater to what you guys are looking for is we're hoping to do more research opportunities and research papers that have to do with the intersection of tech and law. And so just you guys kind of delving into research, I think will be a good opportunity. And you absolutely don't need to commit to going into tech law or anything like that. Our club is to explore those opportunities and internships. And we'll be at the club fair.
It's open currently to LLMs and what else?
Yes.
Great.
Great. Thank you very much. Yay. There are some other organizations who you may be interested in that couldn't make it today. I've already mentioned the Entertainment and Sports Law Society. The STEM Club is for STEM majors. And partly it's pre-professional, but it's also because STEM majors experience having to read and write very differently than liberal arts majors. And so that's a fantastic, wonderful place. HELP is Health Law Policy Partnership? I don't remember. But they're basically, I've written down some places, I've forgotten what it is. It is people interested in health law, and they focus on helping 4 nonprofits do what they're doing. It's a very experiential, fantastic gathering place for people interested in those things. And in fact, as Nicole has mentioned, both PLA and ITSC are new. Manish, you helped found it, right? No, but Nikki founded it.
Yeah.
Nikki Barras, who's currently a 3L JD MBA, founded this fairly recently. And so what I would say is there's room for this to grow and to change. And if there's something that you're interested in doing that's not here, there's a lot of possibilities. But I would encourage you to get involved in one of these organizations. Why? You get access to the upper level students. And when it comes time for a course selection and OCI and all these other things, your peers within your group are wonderful, but they were you last year or 2 years ago. And so they know exactly where you were, and it was as mysterious. And I think this is one of the great opportunities, and to come together in an organization where you share interests with them, where their advice and their perspective and experience is going to be similar to what yours are. I think it's just worth its weight in gold. So I really encourage you to get involved, just for your own self. And I think just hearing about opportunities, there's things that we don't know about, they know. And they've been through this, and they're great resources. All right?
Correct. It was Health Law Policy Project.
Oh, good for me.
Yeah, how about you? Who would think that you remember something and be smart?
Come on.
Yeah.
So the other thing we will do is CTIC will do ongoing programming. One of the things we do is we do these evening programs between 4:30 and 6. This is a sample of the kinds of things we've done in the past. It's sort of going to be dictated by the interest of what's going on now. I mean, we toy with all kinds of things going on right now. One of the things I would love to do personally is something on streaming, which if we did this like 12 months ago would be, streaming is taking over the world, and now everyone's going, wait a minute, maybe not. It's going to be fascinating. We've talked about different other events, and so this is going to be something that we'll pick up. We also will do career speakers, mostly with Penn alums coming in at lunchtime, and they'll talk to you about how they got to where they got. And the reassuring thing is it's not like they knew when they walked in at the beginning of the year that my plan is going to do this and it all unfolds exactly as I've foreseen. It's not the way it works. And so finding out stories about how people navigated this, one is reassuring, but more importantly, it gives you, the answer I always hated is when you ask someone, it depends. Well, it depends on what? The answer is, the only way you can find out what it depends on is collect a bunch of stories that all have their unique qualities and start to understand which ones resonate with you. So that's one of the things that we're trying to do. I will tell you, when I was a 1L, I got to my end of 1L year. I still remember when I was trying to pick a journal note. It's like, should I write about criminal law, torts, or property? And the answer is none of the above, and they're all really boring because nothing has changed in a long, long time. Most notes are written about something more current, and so I just didn't have the exposure in my 1L year, and my determination is to make sure that you will at least have a chance to see what tech law practices are like. I had no exposure to technology law my first year, and so it's a huge problem. We also have the Journal of Law and Innovation Symposium, and I'll give you a list of events. And we co-sponsor events with a wide variety of organizations across the school. Anyone who's got an interest in this, we generally collaborate with them. Upcoming events, just to get you know, as I said, we will do our first CLE probably in October. Usually our kickoff event is a forward-looking one to set up the entire year about what's new in law and tech. There will have a career speaker in October. We're trying to narrow down on 1 of 3 dates, but if you're on our email list, you'll get that fairly soon. The PIPG Symposium that Manish mentioned is October 14th. We're having a book talk with Orly Lobel, The Equality Machine, Harnessing Digital Technology for a Brighter, More Inclusive Future. That will be on October 20th. We have another one on the New Democracy on December 6th, featuring Bill Novak of the University of Michigan. JLI Symposium is on January 20th. And we will be adding events to this constantly. So, and if you sign up for our newsletter, you'll see them every month, at the beginning of the month, of what we've got planned.
We're scheduling now the Dobbs event.
We are working on an event on the public health impacts of the decision overruling Roe v. Wade. And so there's going to be a lot of different events, but our health law faculty are saying, okay, there's a lot of big picture stuff. What does this mean for the public health community and for people delivering health care on the ground? And I think that's a fantastic topic that we're looking forward to exploring.
And psychedelics.
And we are possibly doing psychedelics on the healthcare side in the spring. When I say doing psychedelics, I'm suggesting organizing an event. But be that as it may. In addition, we also have research opportunities. These are probably not something 1Ls want to do. You've got enough to deal with for right now. But more importantly, as you go forward, I probably have half a dozen active papers I'm writing with JD students right now. This is actually a direct outgrowth of COVID, because when that struck, everything changed. And frankly, there were a lot of students who got their summer jobs pulled out from under them, and so I started working with them to try to make a good experience, and it actually worked out pretty well. And so that's going to vary a lot based on the taste. I mean, individual professors have different needs. And I will tell you, you can be a great student if you don't actually fit what someone needs done. Don't take offense. It's just not going to happen, just because we all have different subject matters and different skills we need. But when this works, it can work out really, really well. And it's been a rewarding experience for me and for the students, hopefully.
And Professor Rothman.
Professor Rothman?
Always employs, a
always
assistant or two, and Professor Bartolomowski.
These are some of the top topics we're working on. One is on connecting the unconnected. Digital platforms. We have a major presence here. We have a research project going on called the Economics of Digital Services. Not only do we have Professor Hubbenkamp, but Aviv Nevo is a former chief economist of the DOJ Antitrust Division. Joe Harrington at Wharton is one of the leading cartel people. And there's a whole wealth of people here interested in this space. And so we're actually working with the Wharton Center and different centers across to actually study different things about that. Algorithmic fairness, internet routing security, empirics of patent law, private law theory, trademarks, name, image, likeness. I was just reading this morning about how name, image, likeness is changing all of amateur athletics, call it NCAA sports, because all these things, apparently schools have lost all control, and it's a really interesting problem. And then lastly, just so you know, there are a number of annual faculty events, not all of which are open to students, but some of them are. We do annual roundtables in computer science law and copyright. We're doing the inaugural trademark law roundtable in the first week in October, and so on and so forth. So there are active things going on all the time that are really quite exciting. And so if you're interested, we can talk to you, we can share you about it, and we can actually see if there's opportunities to get involved, but these might be limited just because of the nature of them. Contact information and questions. You can take a picture. We'll send it to you, I promise. I promise. Anyway, questions?
There's got to be a question.
There.
No? Not a single question?
Law students, meek. We will beat this out of you.
And I'm Caroline Wilson. I'm the managing director of CTIC and try to keep the ships running on time.
Do better than try.
As much as I can. Sometimes it's pushing a boulder uphill.
I'm the boulder.
Correct.
All right, okay. Yeah,
Anyway.
please.
Can you expand more on what falls under entertainment and media law?
So this is something we're really starting right now. So it's interesting. Why don't you, do you want to take a stab at this? Or do you want me to do it?
Well, say more about your question. That was a classic law school move.
What I'm hearing is,
I think just understanding, I'm trying to understand where my interests fall in those like categories that you presented. So, like, does media and entertainment, does that mean traditional media and entertainment, like, or does that include new technologies, different platforms?
All of it, yeah. So it would include both. I don't think there's anyone who's currently operating in the entertainment media space who isn't dealing with new technologies that aren't even new anymore, right? They're like now sort of old technologies, but we still call them new. But they're also like, and it's all integrating. So anyone who works in entertainment and media is dealing with streaming platforms, dealing with video games, social media. So I think it's pretty integrated. And media law tends to be an umbrella that includes intellectual property, but also picks up a lot of the speech issues. And then I think you'd have to throw privacy into all of that as well, because all of these companies are, of course, gathering data. So if you work in that space, you have to address those issues as well.
And it's complicated. A lot of these aren't IP related. They're like business model related, you know, in the sense that it's changing the relationship with talent in radical ways. And it's quite striking how that's working. But the other thing that's fascinating to me, companies, media companies who always dealt with through intermediaries, whether they're networks or theaters, and had no direct relationships with customers, end users, are having to reinvent themselves in ways that are causing them enormous indigestion, frankly. I mean, they don't know what's going on. And in fact, I don't know, guys, how much you know about this, but gaming revenue typically exceeds that of the entertainment value property it's under. And Netflix is spending more money on content than any studio, possibly multiple studios combined. And so this has, the whole industry is being remade before our very eyes in ways that people don't know, but actually have tremendous opportunities for employment and research. This is new things. Change is good.
And it's not rigidly demarcated. So now, right, the studios, Netflix are all thinking about ways that they can gamify things.
Yep.
And game companies are obviously making films that you may have seen, which may or may not be particularly creative. I have to leave soon to go to another meeting, so no one take it personally if you ask a question that I should address. But just another way in which technology is really integrated with entertainment and media is about design, right? So if one of my favorite examples is in the copyright space, and it could be in multiple spaces, where technology allows the control of copyrighted works in ways that exceed the requirements of the law. So there's a doctrine in copyright called fair use. You probably use it all the time. Maybe you exceed its boundaries, right? But you play a little segment of something, you show a little video. This is something that's important for new creation, for expression. But if the content is completely locked down, for example, online, then you could design it in such a way that people can't copy it, or you can track it, right? There's the favorite, you may not know, it's a little dated now, but the dancing baby case, who was like dancing to Prince music, seems fabulous. And then his mom was sued for posting it, for violating Prince's copyrights, or really the recording company's copyrights, because Prince was forced to turn them all over to Universal. But right, so in talking to technologists about this, you don't need to design it that way. You don't need to design it so it takes down all material that has a Prince song. You don't need to design it so it prevents you from using clips of video, but you can. And of course, those of you who are really into technology know that you can circumvent all of that, right? But it becomes hard, right? The barriers become higher and higher. And then, of course, we also can design criminal laws to prevent the circumvention of the technology, even if copyright law doesn't require it. So it's very complicated. So entertainment and media really covers the whole gamut.
And Professor Rothman's getting at something that David Nimmer, who writes the leading copyright treatise, contributed a chapter to a volume I edited on cloud. The shift that she's talking about changes it from property to services. You don't buy music anymore, you stream a service. And consequently, the role of copyright law changes dramatically. It's a contract now, it's not a property sale. And this is true in patent law a lot, because now we move to the cloud, where we're actually getting, like Salesforce. It's just a browser, it's just a client. And so actually, they're not selling you software anymore. And this radically changes all the law that applies in ways that people still don't fully understand. This is fun. All right, questions? Anything else? Don't make me call on you. Yes?
I guess this is warfare for 2 hours in the room, but how difficult is it to manage multiple clubs and organizations?
How difficult is it to manage multiple clubs and organizations? So I asked two people who are parts and leaders of multiple clubs and organizations. Noelle, you look like you're going to say something.
Well, I can start. I will say the clubs I am a part of is a 2L is different than the one that I was a part of in the 1L. In the fall, there will be an opportunity for 1Ls if they're interested in, any of these groups and others to apply to be a 1L rep. And I would say, 1L is a lot of work just inside of classrooms and just doing work for it. But working as a 1L rep is usually not that time intensive. Usually, 2Ls and 3Ls understand that 1Ls are very busy, and we would love to have you be more as involved as you want it to be, but it won't take up all of your time.
And what does typically like a 1L rep do, like across the clubs?
Yeah, I can speak to PLAA, but more actually PBLA, which stands for Penn Law Business Law, Penn Business Law Association. And I was a 1L rep and secretary for PLAA, so that did come with a little bit more responsibility. That's not typically normal for other student reporters. It was only because PLAA had a lot of LLMs and we were looking to transition to a more JD representative board. My role as in as a 1L rep as in PBLA was really announcing that there's a speaker series happening in the fall and putting it into 1L group me that on Monday there's this very fun event, people should go, or if you have any graphic design abilities, making posters is a big responsibility. So I would say it's as time intensive as you want to make it, but not at all. Yeah.
About 1L reps in PIPG. You were one.
Yeah. So I guess one of the reps will be responsible for writing blog posts, one blog post throughout the whole year. Additionally, you'll help organize the symposium if you're working with the symposium co-directors. And if you're an event director, you'll help plan an event. But yeah, it's not too much heavy lifting as a 1L rep because you have a lot of other things to focus on. So yeah, it's not too much.
And what's not unusual for people is, among other things, I have a niece who's starting at Drexel in about 2 weeks. And we've told her, join a bunch of clubs to begin with. That you won't stick with all of them, but to get an idea, a broad idea and explore different things. And now is that time for you. And you'll naturally find probably your interests, but also your people. I mean, people who are like you share your interests, and then that naturally has a way of growing. I will say, so among my many sins, I went to business school while I went to law school. And they teach you to recruit like a maniac. You guys are going to be taught pretty well, but not like business people are taught. And so I will tell you is, one of the hardest things to do, most important things you can do, is to shape the mind of who you are in the minds of potential employers. And so, in fact, one of the things they told us is we have 8 levers to pull. And one of them is your clubs. And so if you can, it can actually pull together a gestalt of everything where it all makes sense. And if someone's going all different directions, it's kind of they don't know what's going on, but the employer will say, well, that's not clearly someone who's interested in this. And to me, it was pre-law school employment, externships, summer jobs, student organizations, major writing, college selection, and a statement of purpose at the top of your resume. And when all 7 of those things are hammering in the same direction, you get synergy, where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. If it's a little bit of everything, and I was taught you have a different resume for every job you apply for. I mean, that's nothing wrong with that, because there's different relevant pieces of information for different types of employers. Now, with law school, OCI, that's less possible and it's less important, but the principles are the same. If you're really interested in tech law, having an experience where you have a good summer experience, you've got student organizations, you've got courses, you've taken the stuff from the thing, you're writing a journal topic and you talk about what that is, all of a sudden the whole thing just comes together. And to me, student organizations can play a critical part of that. Frankly, if there's students I look at and they're not part of student organizations, they tell me they're interested in tech law, I'm kind of saying, what's going on? Something doesn't make sense. Because if they really were interested, they'd naturally gravitate to these organizations. You had a question.
Yeah, I was going to ask, was any opportunities to get involved in things related to national security and technology?
So we have, it's interesting. It's a very unique part of what we do. I do some work on internet security. Claire Finkelstein teaches a class on this. She has her own center, so it kind of exists outside, and it's a different world. And with I would encourage you. Yes, there are. They're not as well developed within this center, just because if people told us things, they'd have to kill us. It's just, no, I mean, it's really weird what you have to do to organize those events. And it's a different world. And so there is a different center called Center on the Ethics of Rule of Law that tends to focus on that. But it is a center that is primarily faculty focused, but in my experience, it does have limited opportunities for student involvement. Plus, there's also things like CFIUS and all these other things that are going on out there. CFIUS is the Committee for Inbound Foreign Investment. There's another committee that the export controls on outbound foreign investment, all with an eye towards national security. And to be honest, I've got a former student who was at Homeland Security at FCC. And so when they're all upset about Huawei putting equipment in all these telephone networks in the US, it's him. And so he's part of that process. So yeah, there are opportunities that we can talk about. Anything else? We're at 3 o'clock. Seems like a good place to start. This is not the end of the conversation, nor is it your last chance to ask us questions. I expect it. Please feel free to come and ask any of us. We'll be around for a little while. We'll give you this contact information to everyone who signed up, so you can actually, in addition, I know there'll be things that you'll think up as you go. And we expect to see you at the organization. See you at 6 o'clock tonight. Come talk to them some more. We'll see you in class. And thank you all for coming.
Thanks, guys.
We haven't.
You'll get by default invitations to events that are student, partially student facing. But this will newsletter and other things. Privacy screen, so you don't have to use duct tape to hide your camera. And then our annual report